Well, it's great to be with you. Just take a few moments and share with you a little bit about the role of Character First in our agency. Let me tell you a little bit about our agency and the work that we've done and are doing and continue to do, and then you can get a little sense of what role character plays in what we do. And I'll try to also take a few moments to tell you how I got started in the Character First effort, and then how we actually implement Character First in our agency. We have, as was mentioned, about 8,000 employees in every county in the state of Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma has about 3.2 million people in it. We have about almost 900,000 children in Oklahoma. Probably a little more than 1/3 of all children in the state have their health care funded with Medicaid. And so we do all the eligibility determination for those children in terms of their Medicaid eligibility. In the old days, before welfare reform, there were a lot of people who were getting cash assistance. Those days are over. Today, the number of people getting cash assistance are substantially smaller than they've ever been before. When I was in the Senate in the early 90s, our state would spend about $13 million a month on cash assistance. Today, we spend about $3 million a month on cash assistance. So it's been a tremendous change in terms of what's happened in terms of public assistance. We expect people to work. Now, when we expect them to work, we also understand that their children need to be cared for. So many of the dollars that we were spending on cash assistance before are now going to purchase child care so that they can work. So there's not necessarily been a net savings in terms of the overall situation, but children are typically in better situations because they are in licensed, developmentally appropriate child care, as opposed to being maybe nanny in some kind of a television monitored environment all day and not getting necessarily the kind of personal care that they really should get, particularly for a lot of lower income families that we're talking about. In America, in the last 5 years, there's been a 50% increase in the number of Americans on food stamps. And food stamps is not a work-based initiative. It's basically a food supplement program based upon income. What happens is virtually all of the public assistance programs are tied to the Consumer Price Index. These eligibility standards have not been changed for many years, but as the Consumer Price Index goes up, the absolute dollar amount for eligibility goes up. What has not been tied to the Consumer Price Index has been the minimum wage. So the minimum wage has stayed constant. So for example, in 1970, the minimum wage times 40 hours a week times 50 weeks a year was an amount approximately equal to the poverty standard for a household of 3. Today, that's only 70% of the poverty standard for a household of 3. So the safety net has had to be widened because wages have not kept up with the cost of living. And so every year, the cost of living goes up, but wages don't necessarily go up, and so there are more people who really do need our services. So we end up taking care of mostly children. 50% of the food stamp recipients in Oklahoma are children. The average food stamp benefit is $80 a month, about equal to what a football ticket for the OU Texas game costs. So people aren't really getting rich on food stamps. The idea that people are really, this is some kind of a big giveaway deal is really a misnomer. There is some assistance, but it's not a lot of money in terms of the overall scheme of the world. Well, we have the same number of employees today that we had 7 years ago. Okay? And in those 7 years, the number of dollars that we collect in child support have doubled. Okay? We're adopting literally about 1,000 children a year out of foster care. Probably no state in the nation has been more successful than we have on a per capita basis year after year after year adopting children out of foster care. So 1,000 children a year are getting the benefits of being adopted out of foster care. Food stamp participation's up substantially. Medicaid participation's up substantially. So any program you want to name in our agency, the number of families that need that help are significant. The average Oklahoman makes 82 cents for every dollar the average American makes. Okay? So that'll give you some sense about what kind of challenges we have as a state. Our goal really would be to go out of business. Nothing would make us happier is if we could go out of business. But until the Oklahoma economy produces jobs that make Oklahoma a net importing state for college graduates, we're going to have the need to give people quality assistance at the same time they're furthering their education. So we do a very good job as a state, for example, in improving the going to college rate. More Oklahomans go to college per capita than for example, the national average. Now, our college completion rate is not as good, but our college going to college rate is very good. So all that to say is that our agency, with no more employees, is a lot more productive than we've ever been. If school teachers had a 50% increase in the number of kids in their classrooms and no more school teachers, they'd be marching on the state capitol, okay? We've had a 70% increase in food stamp participation. We're handling it. We've doubled in terms of the quantity of dollars we're collecting in child support, which keeps the public assistance costs down. The better job we do in collecting child support, that goes to reduce public assistance. We're holding people accountable. When I was in the Senate in the early 90s, we established paternity in about 13% of the out-of-wedlock births. Today, we established paternity in over 100% of the out-of-wedlock births because we're still catching up on some paternities that weren't established before. So we are doing the best job of holding non-custodial parents accountable that we've ever done, by far. Very strong commitment to rehabilitating families. And we probably have the most dominant marriage initiative of any state in the nation. We've trained over 1,300 people across the state to deliver marriage education curriculum so that couples can understand the skills they need to form a healthy marriage, communication skills, conflict resolution skills, the importance of forgiveness. What does commitment mean? These kind of skills are basic skills that are very critical to having a healthy marriage and having what's best for kids. While the nation dropped in the number of children being reared in two-parent households between 2002 and 2003, Oklahoma actually increased the quantity of children being reared in two-parent households. So you can say what you want to say about all that's going on. We have a lot of programs happening, but we're pushing all these things in the right direction toward healthy families, which is where we really want to go as a state. So character is a big part of that. I first became familiar with the character. I say all that to give you some sense of the breadth and complexity of our agency. We have 4,000 employees across the state who do nothing but child welfare cases, and we'll investigate over 100,000 allegations of incidents of abuse or neglect for children. We won't confirm near that many, but we'll investigate that many allegations. So children that come into foster care, all those kids are in our custody. When I became director in 1998, the number of children in foster care was going up by about 20% per year. Okay, in other words, we had 20% more kids in foster care at the end of the year than we had at the beginning of the year. Today, for the last about 4 years, that number's been flat, primarily because we're getting kids adopted at really record rates out of foster care. A lot of happy families. We have a big adoption celebration every year, and it's really great to see kids get into a home that really cares about them, where drugs aren't present, where we've done the checking on the well-being of the family before we make the placement. And for the most part, I mean, there's never going to always be a success. There's always going to be some times when mistakes are going to be made. But when you look at the overall big picture, kids are much better off than they've ever been in terms of those kinds of initiatives. Well, we have a very complicated workforce. 65% of our employees have a college diploma. We have a very diverse workforce in terms of our ethnicity and in terms of our values. We have people from every walk of life you can imagine. People who came to our agency off of welfare, went to college, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, and they are really good role models to the families that we're working. We have people who work for our agency who are reared with silver spoons in their mouths. They came from very wealthy families, but because they chose to have some contribution to the betterment of the men, they chose to come work for us for a lot less money. I can tell you that in the last 6 months, we've had 2 executive-level people who've actually taken pay cuts to come work for us. So we have a very culturally healthy environment in terms to work. People tend, not always, you're going to have conflict in any environment, but people tend to say, our goal here is to be here for these families and make a difference. Why I'm rushed here tonight was because I was at the airport meeting 20 of our employees who've been into Louisiana delivering disaster responses to families down there who've lost everything. And the stories that they're telling are enormous in terms of families. I mean, there was the tears in our workers' eyes tonight at the airport as I met them saying, this is just a life-changing experience for us to go see that these families, just like us, have lost everything. And so that's the kind of values that our workforce has. Very committed to making a difference for people. Tom and I, what Tom didn't tell you is that the first year I ran for the Senate, Tom ran for the Senate. And I remember a phone call that Tom and I had on Election Day before the results had been announced for either one of us. And I said, Tom, I'm just calling you, or he was calling me, I don't remember which way it was. Just hope things work out really good tonight. As people are voting, you just sit, you can't do anything on Election Day except twiddle your thumbs and vote because the campaign's over. And you just sit there and you're anxious all day. And I said, I hope things work out for you. And he said the same for me. And Tom said, well, Howard, I have a lot of peace about the campaign, whether I win or lose. He says, he quoted to me the verse out of Proverbs that says that you prepare for battle, but the victory is the Lord's. And so he was at peace. He had done everything that he could do, and it was okay. And I happened to win that night, and Tom didn't. And the guy to whom Tom lost was a guy who had been an incumbent who holds that seat even today. It's very difficult to unseat an incumbent. Tom ran a great race. But out of that campaign experience, we became very good friends. And after the campaign, Tom and Kay really have been good friends to Tracy and me throughout a lot of great experiences over here. I recall some trips we took together to retreats, which were very inspiring to me in terms of my own spiritual journey that made a big difference in my life while I was in the Senate. Well, after I took this job 7 years ago, I became familiar with Tom's initiative to try to do something about character. And so I came and kind of looked around and said, what is this all about? What are you doing? And they kind of gave me some information about it. And I was really kind of, frankly, a little reluctant to get started in it because you're in a public agency. You don't want people to say, oh, here you are using taxpayers' funds to promote some kind of right-wing political agenda. That's basically what you have to worry about. If somebody's here trying to use taxpayers' dollars to try to create some kind of a aurora for some, agenda that somebody might have. And so I kind of approached it with a little bit of caution and looked at it. Just said, what is this really all about? Let me kind of understand what's happening here. And I waited a little bit, and then I decided, really what I need to know is really what are you doing? What are you really doing with this? So early one morning, about 5 o'clock, I got up and I went over to Tom's business. And I watched Tom talk to his employees about character. Okay? Before I ever made a commitment to do this deal, I went to see how Tom did it. And that was a very good experience for me because one of the things that Tom did that really impressed me that morning was that Tom gave to his employees a financial statement. Now, Kimray is not a publicly traded company. Kimray is a closely held company. And that means that a publicly traded company, you have to disclose everything, and there's all these kind of public filings at the SEC. But in a closely held company, you don't have to tell anybody anything, except the IRS when it's time to report your income. You have to report your income, pay your taxes on that income. You don't have to tell your employees anything about how much money you make, how much your sales were, what your costs were. You don't have to tell them anything. You just tell them to do this job. But Tom handed out a financial statement to his employees that morning. That impressed me. Here was a business owner who was willing to be totally transparent with his employees about the role that their work made in contributing to the top line, the cost line, and the bottom line. And by communicating to the employees, we either had a great month because we sold a lot of stuff and these were our sales. I mean, if you had a great month and you made a lot of money, you think the employees would say, we'd like to have some more of it? That's probably what you think is going to happen, right? And if you have a bad month, the employees are going to be kind of quiet and not just say, we're really glad that you're funding the losses. That's kind of how that works. But when you're making money, they want to have a little bit more. Well, he's very transparent about that. Then he began to talk about his employees individually. And so I was really impressed with what he did. And the folks at Character First also made available to me some software. And the software really gave us the ability to produce individualized certificates to employees that talked about each of the character qualities. So after I began to think about how could we do this, how would we implement this in our agency without it being viewed as some kind of a preaching experience for somebody trying to get something done, and why would you do this anyway? Why are you trying to do this? I didn't really even go back to talk to my employees about this. I continued to ponder what was going on in our agency, what was this really all about in terms of what Tom was doing. And I was just thinking about what is the role here of character. And as I began looking at that, I began to understand that we have in our diverse workforce a lot of generational separation. If you've ever studied workforces, you know that there's a lot of different generations in the workforce. You have a lot of persons who came out of World War II who are very loyal employees. Long-term employees have a different set of values than kids who are Generation X kids. And we have a lot of technology in our agency, so we have a lot of these young employees who are big technical, they know a lot about computers. I've learned a lot about computers. One of the things that's really interesting about our agency I didn't know before I went to the agency was what a MIP was. How many of you know what a MIP is? You know what a MIP is? One guy knows two guys know what a MIP is. 3 guys know what a MIP is. I'd never heard of a MIP before I went to the agency. But when I arrived, they told me that our mainframe computer ran at 250 MIPS. And I thought, well, great. What does that mean? That's 250 million instructions per second. 250 million instructions per second. Okay? Today, our mainframe runs on about 450 million instructions per second. And we actually have the hardware capacity to run 1 BIP. 1 billion instructions per second. And we don't run a BIP because all the licenses for our software are based upon the number of MIPS that we run. So if we increase the number of MIPS that we run from 250 MIPS to 450 MIPS, we have to pay larger licensing fees to all the firms that run the software that we purchase. So we balance, to save money, we balance not running our system as fast as we really could technically run it to save money on licensing fees with our vendors, and at the same time run it so that we get all of our work done in near real time. So the point of that is to say that we have an incredibly diverse workforce. We have persons with all kinds of different sexual orientations, different philosophical beliefs, different religions, different values based upon their ages. You have a very diverse workforce. And so why would you want to introduce character into that kind of diversity? The answer is because we don't all have the same definition for these words. We don't all agree on what it means to be honest. We don't all agree on what it means to be trustworthy. We don't all agree on what it means to be virtuous. And so our failure to agree on those terms means we need to spend time evaluating what does it mean to be virtuous. And so you've seen the videos that let our agency know, regardless of where you are in any of those political spectrums or value spectrums or age spectrums, this is what it means to us to be virtuous. This is what it means to be responsible. This is what it means to be honest. And so for us, it's a way for us to transcend all those different diverse value systems to come to a common definition on what it means to have shared values. And by having a common definition for those shared values, we can communicate better about our mutual expectations. If your view of honesty is one thing, and my view of honesty is something different, and her view of honesty is something else, we don't all agree on what it means to be honest. So, character is mostly caught, not taught. So we use these character qualities as a way to have a common definition so that we can each hold each other accountable. So if I do something that's inappropriate, I want somebody to come to me and say to me, Howard, I'm not sure you were as honest or transparent as you should have been about that communication. I want people to say that to me. I want that kind of candor because I want to be accountable like that. So it helps our agency have some shared values across all the different ethnicities, faiths, value systems that exist out there in that workforce, and so that's a good thing. How much time does it take to do this deal? Not a lot. Okay? I'll tell you how I do it. I personally have 6 employees that report directly to me who are the key officers in the agency. They're our lawyer, our chief financial officer, our chief information officer, our chief operating officer, the coordinating officer for all of the vertically integrated activities, and our chief administrative officer. These are the people who take care of all of our real estate, take care of all of our personnel issues, take care of all the support activities, buying supplies for all these different offices across the state. Those people report to me, and we meet every week. But I have 30 people who are part of what we call our executive team. And these are key top managers. Many of them handle hundreds of millions of dollars. Just one of them will handle hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of responsibility. We meet once a month for about 3 hours on the first Monday of each month. And at that meeting, I have a roster of those employees which specifies which month of the year they came to work for our agency. So those 30 or 35 people are all assigned a month. Whichever month they came to the agency, that's the month that they're assigned for my attention. And so what I do is I personally take the time to prepare a certificate for that employee which communicates one of the 49 character qualities that I've seen that employee demonstrate in the last year. And I present that certificate to in front of all those 35 people, and I read it. This is what I've seen this person do in the last year, and I'll give them that certificate. Okay? So it takes me about 30 minutes to 45 minutes or an hour a month to prepare the certificates, and it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes in this meeting once a month to present the certificates. Number 2, every month the character folks here prepare a character quality of the month, and they prepare a bulletin, and we distribute that bulletin to all of the employees who want one. We don't require anybody to take it. This is purely a voluntary activity. We distribute it to all the people in the executive team, and then I spend about 5 or 10 minutes of that same executive team meeting talking about that character quality. And we're going through the bulletin that's furnished by the Character Institute and talking about all the things that impressed me about this month's bulletin. And then I let anybody else in the group who has something that they saw in the bulletin that impressed them. And then we spend about 2 or 3 minutes watching a video that communicates how that value or that character quality has been displayed by an employee in our agency. So the total amount of time that our employees spend on this deal is 10 to 20 minutes a month for these 35 people. It's not a big deal. Now, each of those managers may, if they want to, it's their choice. I'm not making them do anything. Some managers do and some managers don't. They can choose to do this or not do this. Some managers do the same thing with their subordinates. It's purely their choice. And so they can take that same character quality bulletin and they can distribute it among their workers. They can take it home, or they can say, I don't really want to spend time on that, and I don't have to. So that's fine. So it's not like we're pushing anything down anybody's throat involuntarily. People can listen if they want to listen. They don't have to listen. But it helps those people who do listen to understand that we have some common values, we have some common definitions for those values, and that we have some common expectations about those values. And it helps us really do a word study once a month to have common character. Now, why would you do that? Why would you go spend money to do that? Not a lot. First of all, it doesn't cost very much money. Secondly, when you think about all of the scandals that have existed in all these major companies, all these other organizations that continue to have scandal, what really kind of pushed me over the edge here to say we should go do this really involved a conversation I had with an executive of State Farm Insurance who told me that once every other year, they are required to go away for a week of training for character. Not really character, for ethics. So I really view the 15 minutes a month that we spend as a way to avoid going away for a week for ethics training and just say, we're going to do this 15 minutes once a month. So that's really how it's come to be in our agency. It's been a good value for us. I hope you'll take the time to get to see what Tom has to say about character, because I certainly trust what his judgment is. And I want to welcome you to Oklahoma City. We're really proud that you're here. And if we can help make your stay here any better, let us know. Thank you very much.